Wisconsin could be the difference between fascism and democracy. Ben Wikler joins us to discuss it. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Democratic National Convention, the nominating and celebrating convention for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and others. And on the line with us is our old buddy Ben Wikler. He was the Washington, D.C. director of MoveOn.org when he used to drop into our studio from time to time when we were in D.C. He is now the chairman of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. WisDems, WISDEMS.org is the website, and his Twitter handle is Ben Wikler, WIKLER. Ben, welcome back. I'm curious, first of all, how you think this is all playing out in Wisconsin. Wisconsin was one of the states in the last election that, if the election numbers are accurate and hadn't been tampered with by some foreign power, went for Donald Trump, and this time seems therefore very consequential.
Wisconsin, first of all, Tom, it's great to be back with you on the program. Wisconsin is, according to most models I've seen, the tipping point state this year. If the Trump campaign said in a closed-door briefing that was recorded and leaked last year, if we win Wisconsin, we win the election. If we lose Wisconsin, we lose the election. And, of course, my goal every day is to make sure that Trump loses Wisconsin and loses the election. This is a convention that was supposed to put Milwaukee on the national stage. It was going to introduce folks to our state, a huge celebration of all things Wisconsin. It's a little different now. I have to say, there's a combination of heartbreak and elation. The heartbreak is that there isn't this infusion of $200 million in economic activity in downtown Milwaukee that Milwaukee could definitely use in the midst of Trump's coronavirus recession. The elation is that even though so many things have changed, and even though we've had to make it a virtual convention where people are tuning in from their living rooms across the country instead of gathering in person, I think the actual programming is soaring past expectations so intensely, and people are feeling this very intimate experience. Every text message I've gotten from a member of our delegation that would have been there in the arena has been overwhelmingly positive since last night. And I think the way that the convention team is knocking it out of the park, and frankly, the Biden campaign is demonstrating its ability to tell a story that threads everybody into this larger fabric. It's really powerful, and it's giving people a lot of hope in a dark time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was very impressed last night. I commented to Louise, it seems like basically somebody sat down and said, okay, we're going to do a 2 or 3 hour, kind of infomercial thing. And I don't mean that in a dismissive or denigrating way, but a production that is designed to basically sell, this candidacy that has a very clear message and a very clear call to action in it. And we're going to use the very best production values of Hollywood and everything else, everything that we know how to do in this political context, and yet also make it very folksy, very homegrown. I loved the the Zoom call, people applauding after Michelle Obama, for example, and after Bernie Sanders and things. I was just so impressed by the whole thing. Ben, are you getting signals from people in Wisconsin that this is moving the needle, number one? And number two, I know that to a large extent, the problems in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin election, were not in 2016, were not just caused by the fact that Hillary Clinton never bothered to visit the state, but were also caused by Wisconsin Republicans and Scott Walker throwing hundreds of thousands of people off the voting rolls, particularly in the big cities that tend to vote Democratic, and particularly among people with common minority names, African-American names, and in particular Hispanic names. Has that been cleaned up? How is Wisconsin doing now?
So I think of 2016 as a collision of two factors. On the one hand, poll after poll, every single public poll showed Clinton up. On Election Day, the average the polling average showed Clinton was going to win by 6.5 percentage points. And so the Clinton team did not think that Wisconsin was a battleground, and they invested and strategized accordingly, everything from presidential schedule to TV ads, which didn't start till October 28th. The other side of the coin was that all of these efforts to rig the system took full force in November of 2016. So not just the Russian interference that was well documented, targeting voters in Milwaukee, especially African-American voters, to sow distrust of Hillary Clinton, but also voter ID, the incredibly harsh and restrictive voter ID law The first election where that took effect was 2016. Changes to voter registration rules to make it harder to do in-person voter registration, something that Democrats and progressives have relied on. The smashing of organized labor in Wisconsin had taken a massive toll by Election Day in 2016. All of these different efforts came together, and we lost by 22,748 votes. This time, the Republicans are just as ferocious in their attempt to try to suppress the vote. But our side knows that every vote could tip the entire presidential election in our state. We swept every election in 2018 in Wisconsin for the first time since 1982 at a statewide level. This spring, Republicans tried to do everything in their power to suppress the vote. We fought all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and our state Supreme Court. They forced the election to be held in person with very little relief for absentee voters. All the relief we got was won in court against their opposition. But we organized a massive campaign to help people sidestep the GOP's voter suppression machine, and we won a landslide, 10 percentage points, in only the second time in half a century that a sitting Supreme Court justice has lost a seat. So I think we have the kind of energy and grassroots organizing chops to go into this fall and make it look very different. And there's no shortage, let me assure you. There's a full-scale investment and focus on Wisconsin from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris all the way down to local state legislative candidates.
That is great. We're talking with Ben Wikler. He's the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party and formerly was the D.C. director for MoveOn.org. And in that context, Ben, let me take this to a little, from the micro to the macro, from Wisconsin to the entire United States. You were talking about all the ways that Republicans have tried to prevent people from voting in Wisconsin and how successful they were, frankly, in 2016 in many of those regards. They obviously have been doing that kind of thing all over the country, particularly in those states where Republicans have control of the states. To what extent, and I'm sure you're maintaining your connections to MoveOn.org and other national groups, to what extent do you see this very successful pushback that you all have mounted in Wisconsin being replicated or variations on it being played out in other states across the country this year? One
thing that I've been thrilled to see, both among independent groups like MoveOn, where I used to work, and with state parties and the Biden campaign, which, to its great credit, has integrated with local infrastructure and is helping build local infrastructure in state parties across the country. Not something that every presidential campaign does. All across the board, folks are figuring out new ways of doing the critical age-old work of helping people cast a vote. And I've seen the public reports that MoveOn is helping train people in vote tripling, where you recruit friends to, you ask voters not only to commit to vote, but also to give you the first names of friends that they will have turn out. That's something we're doing also at the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, and I think it's happening across the country. The effort to track who requests an absentee ballot and then make sure that those folks get outreach about how to do it. And frankly, if the president sabotages our postal system, we'll switch gears and ask people to hand deliver their absentee ballots. That is a way of getting around this that Trump can't control. And he's freaking out because cities are putting up drop boxes for their ballots that are safe and secure that sidestep his sabotage completely. So there's a tremendous amount of ingenuity, and I think folks are learning from each other about how to make democracy work when the president wants it to fail.
Yeah. Ben, we got about 20 seconds left. Your thoughts on what we need to do to make sure that this president fails between now and Election Day?
I'll tell you the number one thing. Do everything early. Request your ballot now. Turn it in the first day you can. Recruit friends and volunteer now to get the absentee ballot request in. The earlier we do things, the less his last-minute hand grenades can blow things up. Let's organize now and win in November.